Two systems. One believes in rehabilitation, the other, punishment. But what happens when you're the one behind bars? From soft lighting and therapy rooms to steel doors and strip searches, those first hours reveal whether the system wants to change you or break you. On today's episode of The Saturated Show, we're comparing the first 24 hours in a Swedish prison versus a US prison. It starts with a depressing bus ride from jail. Your back is aching from the hard plastic seats, the air thick with the smell of old sweat and fear. Metal clinks with every bump in the road, chains on your ankles, cuffs on your wrists. You look around at the faces of the other men, a mix of regret, anger, and shame. The bus lurches to a stop outside the prison. The guards bark short commands, herding you off the bus like livestock. Cold air hits your face, and the reality of where you are begins to sink in. The guard barely looks at you. To him, you're not a person, just a number. You shuffle forward, chains clinking as the gate slams shut behind you. Your life, you realize, has just changed forever. The booking process. The strip search. Squat. Cough open wide and say "ah." It makes you feel less than human. Your fear multiplies during the orientation process. Stories of inmates being bullied, beaten up, or worse, assaulted, which statistically is a lottery you could win. There's a lot of sitting around, and then the man on the other side of the table asks if you're in a prison gang or have ever snitched on anyone. The guy makes it clear that prison is dangerous, so you have to be honest. He looks tired and overworked, sick of the losers put in front of him, day in, day out. Then a nurse asks you about self-harming or if you're an addict. Looking completely bored or even bitter, she ticks 2 boxes and tells you to move on. There's a queue behind you, in and out, like cattle being branded and sold at auction for cheap meat. It's official. You're now a convict for life. The whole experience is just awful. People talk to you like you're not human, and they don't even know what you've done. To them, you're just a hopeless cause, a byproduct of society. They've seen it all before. Men leave, and before you know it, they're back through the revolving door with another charge staining their pathetic existence. When you finally get into your building, the place is absolutely packed, understaffed and overcrowded. At 541 prisoners per 100,000 citizens, the US has the highest incarceration rate in the world among highly developed nations. You're in a dorm, not a cell. You thought you'd get a top bunk with one small cupboard and a lock for your belongings, but the officer tells you it's full. Instead, you're going to have to sleep on the floor with some guys until a bed frees up. It's so noisy. How is it even possible to sleep? And the rats. One of the few guys who talks to you grins as he lifts a plastic jar. A rat thrashing inside, claws scraping the sides. Vermin, he says, will get at almost anything you buy from the commissary. You glance around the cell. It's overcrowded, suffocating, and crawling with life that shouldn't be there. And this is only your first day. It's total chaos. The only order is segregation. Not all prisons in the US do it, but in this one, it's blacks with blacks, whites with whites, Latinos and Asians mostly sticking together too. It doesn't feel safe. With this many men in such a small space, all separated by race, it's a time bomb waiting to explode. An inmate tells you, for your own safety, you should sit with the whites when you eat in the chow hall. And yes, that includes the guy with the SS bolts tattooed on his neck. No, you don't have to become a white supremacist. It's about self-preservation. It's almost like the system encourages division, so the men won't come together and demand better conditions. Then comes dinner. The guy you've befriended leans over and tells you the prison spends just 296 things a day per prisoner on food. 3 meals for less than the price of a coffee. And it shows. Sometimes it's mystery meat with a slice of stale bread, other times a tray of yellow and beige slop. that looks like warmed-up vomit. It could be worse. You've heard some prisons spend just over $1 a day to feed their inmates, 33 cents a meal. At least when you checked in, you were able to put money in your prisoner account to buy stuff from the commissary at marked-up prices. In the US, prison is a business. It's lights out at 9, but you can't sleep. You hear rats scurrying around. You almost nod off, and then a roach climbs over your face. The floor is hard and cold, but the noise is the worst. Over 150 guys in here, and many are snorers. You barely sleep a wink all night. You can already see how stressful prison is. No wonder some guy got shanked the other week for being smelly. Disrespect, a guy told you. In here, the prison code demands you keep clean. The smallest thing can set off a fight. At 6 a.m., the lights turn on and 2 officers walk around the dorm. A new guy puts his things on the floor next to you. Well, he's not new. He tells you he just did a week in the Special Housing Unit, the SHU. 23-hour lockdown with exercise in a wire-fenced cage, no natural daylight. He had a deep cut on his arm, but you don't ask how he got it. You've read the stats on self-harm in US prisons. You can see why. You feel crazy after just a night. How does anyone spend years in here? The guy said he had been in a fight. Someone had spread a rumor about him. It was a joke, but if he didn't do anything, he'd have been seen as weak and bullied. He had to react. Less than a day in, and you're petrified. You're alone with wolves without protection. Worse, someone tells you an inmate was beaten by officers a few months back, but no one was charged. It's more common than you might think, he says. The biggest shock comes when his buddy pulls out a cheap, scratched-up phone, one smuggled in by officers and sold at 5 times its worth. He shows you a video. The aftermath of officers beating an inmate. Boots stamping on him, blood everywhere. They dragged him out by his feet. The officer who did it didn't get fired. He got a promotion. It was in the news. At breakfast, the food isn't much better. Powdered eggs, a slice of stale bread, and some mush you're told is porridge. It looks like something that was scraped off the floor, but when you leave it, a guy happily takes it off you. You'll get hungry, he warns, smiling like you're an idiot. Then it's work detail, making license plates for a local company that has a contract with the prison. And in this place, it's unpaid. Surely you think this is slavery. A guy tells you that actually a bunch of states don't pay inmates. Then you've got Louisiana at 4 cents an hour, Oklahoma at 10, and North Carolina at 13. So that's pretty much slavery too. Looks like you've got the Alabama system, 0 cents an hour. And you're not even learning anything, just bashing things like a robotic arm with feelings. The weirdest part of the day comes after 4 p.m. when you're back on the block. There are a bunch of guys hunched over, eyes rolled back like zombies, high on synthetics smuggled in by guards themselves. After more slop, some kind of stew the inmates nickname the Red Death because no one knows what's in it. Everyone just sits around doing nothing. Yard day is tomorrow, but it's never guaranteed because of staff shortages. There's no gym, no board games, and you heard the library isn't great. People on the outside think American prisoners can educate themselves, but in this place it's just overcrowded slavery and boredom, or fighting, getting high, and if you can afford it, getting drunk on Pruno. Today there's just one officer for 150 inmates. You once read that 19 to 34% of US prison officers have PTSD, and that their life expectancy is just 59. Crazy, but maybe not so crazy when you read about all the assaults on staff. They might treat men like animals, you think. But it's the system that makes it that way. It's dog eat dog in here. It's no wonder something like 66% of the inmates in your prison will be back within 3 years of being released. You start to wonder if any prison in the world could be different. Well, maybe there is. Sweden isn't as peaceful as it used to be. There are only 92 people per 100,000 in prison, but that's double the rate just a decade ago. There's been huge increases in violent crime, shootings, drugs, all thanks to a surge in organized crime. So, on your first day in Swedish prison, you're worried about overcrowding and mixing with the country's new wave of criminals. You're in one of the 17 facilities nationwide, a Class 1 place, high security, because you committed a violent crime. You were informed that with good behavior, you could be transferred to Class 2, medium security, and then Class 3, which is basically open. When you book in, they take your clothes, but there's no strip search. Surprised? You asked an officer why. He told you that only happens if they have solid evidence you're a security threat. So, you go into a separate room and change into your grey pants and sweater. They all call you by your first name. In Sweden, they don't have prison numbers. The government says it's dehumanizing. During the orientation, you and some other guys are informed that your human rights are important. If you think they are ever breached, you will have access to NGOs, and you can speak to the media. The guy tells you that you are expected to report wrongdoing if you experience it. You'll have visits twice a week, all contact visits. These will never be taken away, but if anyone tries to smuggle you drugs, they will get in trouble, and your future visits will be more closely supervised. As your wife lives 2 hours away, occasionally your visits will last half a day. You then go through medical and psychological screening. The doctor is really understanding, treating you like your doctor did on the outside. He tells you that you'll get your medication, and you can make an appointment anytime you want to see him again. Of course, you'll already receive cognitive behavioral therapy twice a week, and there will be group therapy. For you, anger management. Your well-being, he says, is the prison's main concern. He says that you pose no significant risk, so you will be going to the general population, not the high-security block where activities are more limited. But if you become a risk, that's where you might end up. Next up, a visit with your caseworker. He's already studied your conviction. He will guide you if you want to fight your case. He's there for you throughout your entire sentence and will try to get you transferred as early as possible to a Class 2 prison. Hopefully, he says, you'll be back with your wife soon. He goes through your rehabilitation options. You both agree you'd like to study for your high school diploma. That's it. You're already on the course. Some classes will be online in the education block, but occasionally there will be one-on-one tutoring. Lastly, he says, prison is not supposed to be a punishment. It's not meant to act as a deterrent through suffering. Losing your freedom is enough. They don't want to take your dignity. The emphasis of this experience is for you to leave ready to be a responsible member of society, so you won't re-offend. An officer, known as a criminal carer, takes you through a series of corridors and hallways. He's upbeat and friendly, and this place is so clean. It looks like a budget hotel or a school. When you get to the block around midday, it's quiet. Most of the prisoners are working or studying. In the main hall, there's table tennis, a pool table, a small library behind a window, and a well-stocked gym in the corner. The officer tells you that every day, for 1 hour, you can go into the yard outside. If you like sports, you can join the basketball team or play soccer on the artificial turf pitch. The cell itself looks like a dorm room, maybe about 90 square feet, 8.3 meters, so quite spacious. About double the size of those cells you see on American TV. The walls are painted pink. There are wooden bookshelves, a wooden bed frame with a comfortable mattress and quilt. Next to your desk is a TV and some shelves where you can put your family photos. The bathroom is simple, a porcelain toilet and sink. Showers, says the officer, are communal but designed for privacy. This is your room. No one will come in if you don't invite them. Officers would only ever search it if they have good reason to believe you're a security threat. That doesn't mean it'll be tossed and your things taken. They'll try to leave it as they found it. You're not their enemy. They are here to help you transform. You put your stuff down and sit on the bed and look out the window. That's one thing you've noticed here. It doesn't feel claustrophobic. There are views almost everywhere. It feels fresh, open, and it's all really, really clean. When the guys return from work, most go into their rooms. One guy knocks on your door and introduces himself. He's an old-timer and will try and help you get through your sentence. That's how things go in here. The ones with longer sentences help the newbies. And don't worry, he says, fighting is rare, murders are unheard of, and not too many inmates self-harm. If you do, they'll get help, but it hardly ever happens. Then he claps his hands together and asks if you can cook. Your block has self-contained sections, and each section has about 8 to 12 guys who share a kitchen and a common room. Each prisoner is allocated about $9 a day for 3 meals. You get together and arrange your meal plans and put in orders for fresh meat, vegetables, fruit, and whatever else you might need. You each help out with the cooking and cleaning, taking it in turns to make whatever you are good at. You guess the first shock is that you can all handle knives. The guy tells you in other parts of the prison it's a chow hall system, but here in the self-contained units, you're given trust even though it's a Class 1 prison. Tonight, you're making meatballs and mashed potatoes with yellow pea soup and pancakes. Tomorrow's menu is a favorite: beef tacos with homemade rhubarb crumble and Mississippi mud pie for dessert. The guys arrive and actually seem pleased when you mention you can whip up a decent Indian curry, though your Thai curry still needs work. That just made you some new friends. After you finish eating, you have free time. You can sit back in the common room and pick a movie or go to the gym. Some guys sit and chat, but a lot head into their rooms for some privacy. You don't have any books yet, and the library doesn't open until tomorrow, so you borrow a novel from one of the guys and read in your room. It's lights out at 10, but you can still watch TV. This isn't an open prison, so the doors are locked at night, but there are plenty of officers on call if you need them. To be honest, you'd barely slept a wink last week worrying about prison, but that night, you sleep well. The lights come on at 7 and there's a buzzing noise. You head to the shower rooms, like those in a public swimming pool, draw the curtains and enjoy the heat from the water. Breakfast is pre-made. It's only dinner you have to make yourself, but you all eat together in the common room. 2 eggs, toast, muesli, sliced banana, yogurt, and a cup of steaming hot fresh coffee. The food is not bad at all. You once read that in some countries, like the US and UK, the prison food is mostly processed junk. That leads to significant health problems in the populations: diabetes, hypertension, and depression. If you were fed slop, you'd feel like an animal and probably act like one too. In that same study, you read that 69 US prisoners from 100,000 suffered mental or physical disorders. That's compared to just 73 per 100,000 in Sweden. Now it's time for work detail. You were told that there are a number of options, and each should be seen as training to get you ready for work on the outside. There's metalworking, carpentry, printing, and bookbinding in your prison. Most of the work is for the prison system itself, making furniture for the cells or gym equipment. If anything goes to an outside company, it should involve some skill. The point of work is to teach you something you can use on the outside. The payment is $1.50 per hour. Not bad, seeing as the average in Sweden for prisoners is between $1.20 and $1.80. It's enough to buy snacks from the commissary and maybe get an MP3 player or some books and magazines. The work itself is pretty easy with lots of breaks. Lunch was sandwiches, ham, cheese, tomato, on French bread. That evening, you get picked for the soccer team. There's a league, and the different units get to play each other, and once a month play the officers and staff. In terms of your sanity, this is going to help a lot. Sure, you miss your wife, you miss your freedom, but you're focused now on becoming a better person. Tomorrow, you'll be studying. You'll also have your first group therapy session about your anger issues. It's a problem, and you want it gone from your life. Truth is, half the guys in here are probably from poor backgrounds and suffered some kind of trauma in childhood. It's pretty simple. They need to grow out of it. If it goes untreated, they'll likely commit more crimes. So all in all, you're quite busy. There's barely any sitting around, and when you do get a chance to rest, you feel you've earned it. One of the prisoners told you he'd once been in the highest security block, and even there was a lot of freedom of movement. In Sweden, there's no such thing as caging men for weeks, months, years on end. There's no such thing as denying prisoners natural daylight. After all, isn't that torture? Why would a country torture its own citizens? Still, the prisoner said, there are fights sometimes, and the occasional bit of drug use, usually when the young gang members cross paths with the biker crews. But with just over 100 reported incidents of violence across all of Sweden's prisons in a single year, well, more than that probably happens in one day in just one American prison. From what you've heard, it must be hell to serve time in the USA, or at least in maximum security, but even medium. Spending all day on edge must mess up your mind, and solitary confinement is hardly the answer to mental problems. In Sweden, it's about rehabilitation, not incapacitation. And when you've served half your sentence, you'll be given release days so you can slowly transition to society. This is for everyone, although for particularly dangerous inmates, there is more supervision. Still, in Sweden, no one ever just gets thrown back onto the streets, jobless, hopeless. It just never happens. That would be a recipe for reoffending. You once read that supporters of the US system argue that adopting a Swedish-style model would only encourage more crime. If prison isn't terrifying, people won't fear it. So the logic goes, the system must be harsh and dehumanizing to serve as a deterrent. And inmates must suffer, so victims of crimes, sometimes horrible crimes, have justice. The problem is, their system clearly doesn't work. The US is the most crime-ridden and violent nation in the developed world. Men come out of prison worse than they went in, and quite often they hurt people again and return, leaving trauma in their wake and costing taxpayers money. Maybe they should update their system, you think, as you lie on your bed. But you guess there are a lot of people heavily invested in the status quo. We've seen what the first 20 hours look like in Swedish and American prisons, but another country takes a very different approach. Watch what happens in the first 24 hours inside Japanese prison to see how strict their system really is. Or click on this video instead.